Long Island Backstory with Chief Correspondent Gary Jacobs.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary Jacobs, and welcome to another edition of Long Island Backstory, where we're filming at the Alt-T Studios, which is formerly Cablevision. They're the ones who rip you off with your cable bill every month and give you shittier and shittier service. But we are using their studio here, so thank you, Alt-T, so at least I get something for my money. Actually, you know what? I don't even have Alt-T's anymore. I switched to Verizon. I was so disgusted with the bill. But anyway, I'm at Alt-T Studios. Thank you very much, everybody. So I'm Gary Jacobs. Thank you for watching. If you like the show that's coming up, which I'm sure you will, I'd appreciate if you go to YouTube and subscribe to the Long Island Backstory channel. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, and we're getting really close. So my guest today is Michael Gilligan, who happens to be not only a fellow advocate and somebody who's very well spoken and educated in the court system, but he's also somebody I'm proud to call as a dear friend of mine. He may want to disown that or disavow that but anyway, I consider Mike a very good friend. Mike Gilligan is retired from the New York City Police Department after serving 24 years. He worked in the boroughs of Brooklyn, Bronx, and Manhattan. Mike Gilligan learned more about the constitutional rights post-NYPD and has asserted those rights pro par or pro se as a result of a high conflict divorce and our corrupt family court system, which very much or so, you'll see that I say all the time how corrupt our system is here, and unfortunately Mike Gilligan found out that the hard way. Mike Gilligan was alienated from his two sons by his ex-wife. Mike then defeated a temporary order of protection and forced his ex to come back from fleeing out of state with their children. From educating himself, Mike is now reunited with his two sons, who now live again here on Long Island and get to see their father on a regular basis. Mike encourages others to get to know their rights instead of fully leaning on attorneys, and has become a powerful advocate in his own right. And people haven't seen anything yet, because this man is very well read and has learned the system. And as I say, sometimes these courts have to be careful, because sometimes they can screw you, and most people, I would say 95% of the people go away. But there are 5% of the people that don't go away, and they educate themselves, and they're creating this monster of Mike Gilligan, and I use that term in a nice way, the monster, because now you're educated, and you won't let them get away with their bullshit that they get away with, and you call them on it. And I've personally been in court when Mike called them on their bullshit, including the court officers. But that's not what we're here to talk about today.
No.
We're here to talk about today is I asked Mike to come on the show to talk about gun control. And I wanted to do that, first of all, just as an educated person in rights, but also from the perspective of a New York City police officer. I think he has a different perspective than somebody like I do, somebody who was not raised with firearms in the house, and really guns scared the shit out of me. Mm-hmm. So although now I have one because I wanted it for protection, because I'm an advocate and my ex-wife's fucking nuts. So I decided I wanted a gun. Anyway, but we'll talk about my story later. I think that'll come in. So Mike, welcome to Long Island Backstory once again.
Very happy to be here, Gary. Thank you.
So let's start at the beginning with the premise of, do you believe, because some people don't believe we have a problem. I read on Facebook all the time. Do you believe that we have a problem with gun violence in America?
Well, there's clearly a problem with gun violence in America from what you're seeing on the media. But, and we have to do something about it. But my concern is about all this talk about the red flag laws and depriving us of our liberty to the Second Amendment and take away our rights, similar to like they try to do when we're in civil courts in here on Suffolk County, Long Island, in family court. They try to take away your liberties to things that are yours.
Well, I have a whole script here. My next question was, what do you attribute this to? But I want to go back, because you mentioned the red flag laws. And I think at first, if everybody looks at this, and this is where if you see something, say something, you see somebody's, you think they're acting crazy, and you can report it, their guns can be confiscated, and then theoretically they have a trial and a hearing, and it sounds great. Right? Because what else could you do? But I think from our perspective, we deal with something similar to this red flag law, which is these temporary orders of protection.
Correct.
And although, again, that sounds like a good thing. Somebody should be able to go to court if they're fearful of their husband, of their wife, and temporarily temporarily, meaning 1 day, 2 days, and then there should be you have to go to court and prove something. And that's what scares me, Mike, and I know you have the same concern. So explain what your concern is about the red flag laws.
I'm concerned that anybody willy-nilly, just on a minor dispute with somebody, could go into court like they do within family court, ex parte before a judge, making
Ex parte
complaints.
means without both parties being present.
Yeah, with one party being present, usually the person making the complaint against somebody else. And then what they'll do is they'll automatically give out these orders like they do in family court, like candy, and they're going to deprive not innocent people of their rights to their liberties, to their rights to bear arms, to their rights to have their firearms. And what it'll happen is that, you know, the art of presumption of guilt in this country is alive and well. It's that, you know, people are guilty and they have to prove themselves innocent, like we have to do like I had to do in family court on a temporary order of protection.
Right. And what, you know, we spoke about the dangers, and I said if they did these red flag laws, how long do you think before they would start being used in a divorce case where somebody says, oh, I get the order of protection, but I'm also going to call up the government and say, I'm afraid that he's got a gun and he's going to shoot up the courthouse. Next thing you know, now that's got, and I got to tell you, as somebody like you who had their constitutional rights taken from them without having their day in court, it's a horrible feeling because we're brought up that this is so fundamental. Our Constitution is strong and we have rights in this country. And when they're taken away without you having due process, and you know, because I was friends with you for how many months was it before you actually got your day in court?
Right. It was,
8 months, 9, you missed Christmas. And I know because I was with you, and that feeling was horrible. And I had it where I went to get a gun and I was told, we're denying you because your ex-wife called the police on you several times, but I was never convicted of a crime. And I said, you know what, I really never wanted a pistol before, but I knew I could get one. Right. Then I couldn't get one, and that feeling is horrible, you know, and I don't take that lightly.
Hey, listen, I'm a retired New York City police officer, and I retired without my firearms for a specific reason, because this state and the domestic violence laws, I had to protect myself, and the only way I could do that was to not have my guns when I retired, because, you know, when my temporary order of protection was filed, my guns were mentioned, and my ex did not know. My ex did not know that I had gotten rid of my guns, and I needed to protect myself because I want to be able to get guns in the future. But I know once you're under this domestic cloud, you know, under these domestic violence laws, you know, the burden is going to be on me to prove myself that I'm okay, and it's, you know, it should be the other way around, and that's what's going to happen with these red flag laws. It's going to pit neighbor against neighbor, family against family. And it's going to be if it happens, it's going to be a true shit show.
So do you think in theory though, if there was, like, they came in, somebody's said, you think your neighbor's doing something, they take away their guns for a day or 2 days, they get a day in court, and then the government or the people have to prove their case. Do you think then it would work? If in theory it worked. We know, unfortunately, because of the way our system works, it doesn't happen.
It's not going to be just for a day.
Right.
That's unrealistic. I just think that I think it's very important for people like me. Here I am, a man, post my career as a police officer who's supposed to know the law, you know, this, that, and the other thing. I've learned more about my constitutional rights post NYPD, and that's what I encourage people to do. You need to know your rights. You need to get yourself a pocket constitution and just read it on your leisure. Know what your Second Amendment right, know what your First Amendment right is.
Mike, knowing them is one thing, but they don't abide by them here. So how do you
see? But that's it. I think that's
half the battle is knowing, but then the other half is how do you enforce?
Isn't it our responsibility to make it come alive in the courtroom, like I tried to do when I went to court? And it's our responsibility. And you've seen them in court. They get angry when you start bringing up your constitutional rights. They get angry at you. They come after you. Yeah. They don't like it. They get angry with you.
How dare you?
How dare you? You know what I mean? It's like, the lawyers and the judges, they speak the Constitution, they mention it, but in theory, inside their courtroom, it's not alive at all, unless we bring it in and we make it come alive. And that's what, and when you rely on a lawyer, I'm sorry to say, and there's a lot of good lawyers out there, I don't want to discourage people from. I'm not saying don't get a lawyer.
And you've used lawyers too. So
and I've used lawyers too, and I've fired lawyers. But you have to know, in order to question a good lawyer, you're going to have to know your rights and say, hey, listen, are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? Are you going to challenge jurisdiction? And like, you know, when you ask them these questions, sometimes they look at you like, what do you mean challenge jurisdiction? We don't do that. Well, yes, you can. And it's something you could challenge at any time during a court process.
So just getting back to the gun issue, what do you attribute the rise in the gun violence? Because when we were kids, there wasn't as many mass shootings, there wasn't as much violence. School shootings this is just insane. You know, when we were in school, we ducked under the desk in case a nuclear bomb.
That's right. I remember
a missile
doing that.
came with a nuclear attack. Now kids do drills for active shooters. You know, so what do you attribute the rise in gun violence to?
The one first thing is the lack of fathers in the kids' lives. And you know, hey, listen, a lot of the issues we talk about in family court, the lack of fathers, our FOOL system, otherwise known as the school system, is not properly teaching.
Now, you talk about the fathers. That's something we want to spend a little time on, because I read just recently that out of the there was just two more shootings, but of the last 27 shootings, 26 of the boys, because unfortunately they're all boys, young men, that they were raised in fatherless homes or in high conflict divorces. Right. You can't ignore that statistic.
You can't.
You just can't. It's statistically there's got to be some correlation.
Right.
You know, between fathers in the home. So I think that's something that we need to. One of the prongs that we need to look at is fatherless homes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I can tell you, hey, just this year, you know, I've been reunited with my sons. One of my sons and I went out to Arizona, and we got to go to a firing range, and we learned together. We went to a class, we went to the range, and that's where it begins. It begins with, you know, you have a relationship, and you get to teach them, you know, mentor them as man to son, right. At your child, just to do the normal things. And you know, it's difficult. I've had to fight to get to this point, you know what I mean? And I think we're going to be okay, but there's a lot of kids and a lot of families. From being a police officer, I've seen it all. You know what I mean?
And I'm sure you were one of the ones who showed up with orders of protection, right?
I had
CPS.
CPS, but you know, I considered myself a different type of a cop. I'm a bit probably the last bit of old school that exists in the NYPD today. It's just, you know, they're like robots today, and they don't know their rights. Like I said, this is, you know, they're talking to a man that knows more about the Constitution now than I ever did.
Right.
And I felt a little bit embarrassed about it, because they're, you know, I mean, and I wondered why. You know, I felt a certain way about certain topics when I was active on the job, you know, and I used to get into arguments with other cops, you know, about certain things. And but the father issue is number one, and parenting your kids, and just, you know, showing them, setting the example.
I think the courts are responsible, Mike, to be honest with you. I think somebody be right who is a victim of these shootings from one of these fatherless homes to track it back and go back to because I hold my judge in my divorce, Marion McNulty, I hold her personally responsible for what happened to my kids. Yes, my ex-wife I hold responsible, but you know what? She was mentally ill. She was bitter. She had her own issues. But her accomplice was the courts. And same thing in your case. You know, listen, you guys got divorced, your ex-wife was mad, whatever reason she did it. But if somebody would have stopped her in her tracks and said, Mrs. Gilligan, don't do this, or you're going to pay and it finally did happen. A judge finally did it, and look how it changed things. If this would have been done, if you would have had this judge who did this at the beginning of your divorce, it would have stopped.
Well, the system, the court system definitely.
So they're responsible for these.
They support this.
To me, they have blood on their hands.
They support the separation
kids.
of families.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about
it.
And they look at it in a business perspective. I mean, there's no morals or values involved in it.
No. They even say it, Mike. They say, this is, think of this as a business transaction. It's freaking kids. It's not a business transaction.
It's the truth.
Money is one thing.
Totally the truth.
But that is not a so on Facebook, when we were putting about the show coming up, one of the attorneys on Long Island that we both know, Mace Greenfield, made a comment. He said, open carry for all, and anyone who wants to use their gun for ill will think twice. What do you think about everybody having a gun?
I think it's, in a perfect world, it might be a perfect thing, but you know, we don't live in a perfect world, and you know, we have in New York State, we have one of the, you know, the strictest gun laws in the country. They do all the proper checks already. To get a carry permit in this county or anywhere else, it's like pulling teeth. Everything is already in place to keep guns away from people. I just think that it's a great concept in a perfect world, but I don't think it's realistic.
So now what about the other argument? Okay, it's one thing to have a handgun, but if somebody's got a handgun, they go to do a shooting or whatever, other people with handguns, by the time they get there, you could limit the damage. Whereas if somebody goes in with an assault rifle or a semi-automatic rifle or something with a big clip, by the time the 3 minutes before the cops can get there to shoot the guy, he may have already killed 20 people. So does anybody really need an assault rifle?
I don't know. I'm on the fence about that.
And you and I have friends who have some pretty insane rifles, but he's a responsible owner.
We're responsible owners.
So, but who's to say who's the responsible owner?
Right. Well, I think it's an individual right. I mean, and I wouldn't mind having the right to go out with my sons with a Henry rifle or even an AR-15 semi-automatic weapon and target shoot and do it properly. And teach them all the safety features on what to do, how to store a vehicle, a weapon.
But Mike, once they're on the market, though, that's the problem. Once they're out there, they're going to get into bad hands. So do we need them out there?
They're out there.
You have to weigh it out.
They're already out, but they're already out there.
But you can't. I don't think that's like saying, well, there's heroin out there already, so let's just let it go. Do we just throw up our hands and say, you know what, there's rifle, or do we say, let's stop it today, and maybe in 5 years there'll be less?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a slippery slope. Once you start infringing on people's individual rights, and that's what it comes down to.
Do we have a right to own one of these AR-57s or whatever they are?
Well, technically, yes. Yes, you do. You have a right. You have a right to bear arms. You have a right to go and, But again, like I said, if they do a background check and they find out something about you, or they get, like I said, it's a very slippery slope. What's happening, and I was sharing this. What guaranteed rights of protection do we have in this country? Is it guaranteed to you and me or anybody else out there in the world on a daily basis?
Well, where does it end, though? Like, we have the guaranteed right to bear arms. Can we have a flamethrower? Can we have a nuclear warhead in our backyard? That's arms, right? If it's the idea is we have to protect ourselves against the government, that AR rifle is not going to protect you against the government showing up with a tank and an atomic, a nuclear missile. So where does that right end? There has to be some line, right? That I think. Do you? Maybe you don't think so.
I think there is a line, and I think it's already in place. I think they're politicizing this to a large extent. I don't know the facts and circumstances exactly as the police in El Paso or Dayton, or even Parkland. You know what I mean? I don't know what makes these. We had this whole talk about video games. And does that have an impact on this?
Well, I think it does.
I think it does too.
Desensitization?
Yeah, because you got.
But do we have a right to play them?
You have a right to play them. But it's really up to the parents and to monitor their kids and to get them outside.
That's not working, is it?
No, it's really not. It's really not. And it's a very complex problem, and I don't think there's any one solution. I think that we have the laws in place already, and background checks already. And like I said, some of these kids, like the kid in El Paso, apparently he had all his ducks in order, and he was able to get the guns that he got. But he wasn't really connected to anybody. If you're a loner and you're isolating yourself, how are we going to protect ourselves from that? And I'm talking to my sons about. What are you going to do if you're in a Walmart and this happens? You know what I mean? It's really our responsibility to protect our family and our kids and our situation, and have them be well-rounded, have them thinking about it, because it's out there now. And a lot of these kids don't know what's going on. They're so deep into their video games, they don't know that these shootings are happening.
Right.
They don't know about what happened in Philadelphia yesterday.
They're not watching the news, right?
They're not watching the news. They're not watching current events. You know what I mean? It's. But as a policeman, I've been to these scenes where it's devastating, and you know what I mean. It's you're not going to stop. You're just not going to stop it. What happens in Chicago every weekend or every week is 10 times worse than what's what happened in one event in El Paso. I'm sorry about that happening. I wish that somebody would have intercepted that guy when he came right into the door before he pulled the trigger and took him out. But
as a policeman, if you're walking down the street and you go up to a crowd of people who are fighting, and everybody's got a gun, does that scare you?
I've been in that situation.
I would think it would scare me.
I was scared.
But you believe it's okay still for people to have them?
Listen, we had a conversation in the car with my son on the way over here. What happens now when you deprive people of the rights to these guns? Look what happened in the 20s when they took alcohol away from people, and they started, selling alcohol, illegally everywhere. You don't think that's going to be happening right now? You don't think that there's somebody who's looking at that the government's going to take the right away to get these rifles, and somebody's stockpiling them now?
Well, they did it when Obama was president, right? I went out and bought bullets because I heard that he was going to take away the bullets.
Right. And then these people, people are going to be buying AR-15s and CAR-15s in the back of somebody's trunk.
But if they're harder to get and there's less out there has to just statistically be less crime, right? Less gun violence with them.
No, it's crime. It's most of the crimes that are occurring have nothing to do with weapons. When people burglarize, they're stabbing people, they're beating them up, they're using baseball bats. But even stabbing people, you can't stab 30 people in 30 seconds. Somebody could tackle you, throw something at you. When you got these assault rifles, we're sitting ducks. The kids in the school, what could they do? Listen, I thought of all these scenarios as a policeman.
And I don't know the answer, but
I worked Times Square a lot, and I used to talk to my partners. What are we going to do if this happens? What are we going to do with this bus? Happens with this bus. What are we going to do if the guy, appears in front of Duffy Square in Times Square and pulls an automatic rifle and just spins around, pulling the trigger, fully automatic way? What are we going to do? I thought about those scenarios all the time.
But yet you still think it's okay? We said the right to have them.
I mean, it's part of our constitutional rights. I believe we have to do the best we can to identify those people that shouldn't have them, but then it just gets it'll get abused. I mean, just look what happens with these exportés, with these complaints that people make about somebody else for orders of protection to keep them away from their family. It's going to be the same thing. Right. And you know who's going to stockpile the weapons? The government.
Well, we're talking about the government, though. Do we need guns to protect ourselves from the government anymore?
Oh, we definitely do.
Right.
We definitely do. I mean, it's what they're doing now is, like I said, we're responsible to keep the Constitution alive in our courtrooms and in our daily lives. And the biggest problem in America is the ignorance to their rights. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to exercise them. And when you ask an attorney, they're officers of the court and act in the best interest of government, not in the best interest of their client.
But interestingly, the attorneys that I knew that commented were all for more guns. Attorney Phil Giacino commented, more guns in the right hands, like mine, and less guns in the wrong hands
I totally
will
agree.
help.
I totally agree.
So why not say every family has to have a a gun? Wasn't there a county where somebody said, or there is somewhere where they say everybody needs to have a gun? I forget where it was.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of choice. Some people don't like guns. I mean, but if you want to protect your family and you want the right to have a gun, you should be able to exercise that right. And I should be able to go get a firearm to protect my son, right, my girlfriend who's here today, and anybody else that I want to protect. If somebody wants to come and burglarize my home and they have a gun and I confront them, we have that right. But you don't have to have a gun. People choose every day not to live that lifestyle. You know what I mean? But I would certainly want to exercise that right to protect my family and to make sure that I'm secure in my personal effects in my home.
What about teachers, Mike? Should teachers have guns?
I mean, a lot of these school shootings. I think there's got to be somebody there that has carrying a firearm. I don't have a problem if a teacher has been properly qualified. I don't see the problem in it. I really don't. Especially if they conceal it and they have it on them, and the kids can't see it. But if something happens, they could take action and save lives instead of being a sitting duck. Absolutely.
So you feel more comfortable with your son going to school knowing that there's somebody trained in the school with a gun?
I would, but as a parent, I would want to know who that person is too. You know what I mean? I think that we should know who it is, and you know what I mean, so that we're all informed. I mean, but yeah, because if I kept saying, like in Texas, I was shocked to hear that all these people were killed, and in Texas the gun laws are like, everybody has a gun. How come nobody got to this guy? There had to be somebody with a firearm in there. How come they didn't get to him before all those people had to perish?
Yeah. That's what the argument is. Well, if everybody has a gun, they'll be less likely to do it because somebody may shoot them. But Texas, I would say, hey, if you're going to do a shooting, don't do it in Texas because a lot of people are going to have guns. Do it in New York City where nobody has guns, right? So I don't know that works either.
There's a lot of craziness.
I mean, I think
no rhyme or reason to anything. And
but I think like it's really a multi-pronged approach. We have to look at long-term, short-term. But in my opinion, we can't do nothing.
No.
I mean, we can't just sit back and let people be murdered every day.
It's your responsibility. It's my responsibility. It's my responsibility to tell my son who's sitting across the room here, if this happens, what to do. This is how you do it. This is where you proceed. You go to the back. You go out the rear of the place.
How sad is that?
And you try to help others get out. Try to get others get out. You know what I mean? And
because we have 2 minutes left, so that is. I mean, we talked about some options. I don't think we solved it, but what advice do you have as a New York City? I mean, you were trained very well, and you survived. Any advice for people if they are involved in a mass shooting somewhere? Somebody comes out with a gun. What do you do? They used to say what? To hide?
No, you have to talk about it with your family. I mean, I would always encourage people to take a self-defense class. Some of these men and women in these in these dojos and some of these places will give you great advice on developing a plan for your family in the home, developing a plan when you go out, and you need to talk to your kids about these things. I would want to talk to my son. Hey, listen, he's 17 now. If I had a gun and I was in the house, I'd say, listen, you've been qualified in the gun. This is where it's going to be. You never go in there without me knowing about it, but if there's an emergency, this is the combination. And then we protect ourselves, we protect the family. And you have to have a plan, and it has to be something that you do together with your family, and you have to know your rights. People, start knowing your rights. Get a pocket Constitution and read it, just so you know, because it only comes alive when you make it come alive, because the court system and the people in government, the pigs, ain't going to do it for you.
All right, great. And Mike, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for everything you do, sharing your knowledge, because it's hard, this is not easy to become learned in the Constitution, and I, like you, didn't know all these laws and rules until I got involved in the case, and you're sharing it with everybody. I personally, I thank you, and I appreciate all that you've done. It would have been better if you knew about this before you got into the mess, we can't go back in time, but
people can learn from our mistakes.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Bob.
I'm Gary Jacobs. Thank you again for watching us at Long Island Backstory. If you're watching on YouTube, please go to the bottom and click on the subscribe button. I really appreciate that. The more viewers we get, the better. It doesn't cost anything. You could also click on the little bell notification, and you'll get notified every time we upload a video. And same thing if you're watching us on TV right now. Please go to the Facebook page and like Long Island Backstory, as well as our YouTube channel. And we'll see everybody next week. Thank you.
Long Island Backstory is made possible in part by Americans for Legal Reform, the oldest, most successful legal group in the world. P.O. Box 2679, Huntington Station, New York 11746. Telephone 631-421-6390. Website Americans4legalreform.com.